I work for a large global IT company. In my team, we are part of a larger extended team and an even larger, still divisional team. The manager of this divisional team is called Raj. He's based in the States and is what many would call the poster boy definition of a corporate suck-up. According to him, he is in constant video chats with the CEO and has a lot of face-to-face interaction with him. He also appears on much of our division's promotional emails and photographic material, so he's a company-wide recognized person. As for me, I am a trench-working techie from Scotland. My direct manager is always happy with my performance, and I am somewhat known in our extended team, but not so much in the divisional team. Until this event, which was a while before the COVID outbreak, although I was aware of Raji and his reputation, I had never worked with him directly. I got invited to a company-wide collaboration event in America, which we usually use for technical training and innovation discussion. We got there, and there were some initial social events and meet and greets. Raji was amongst the group, and his general demeanor seemed appropriate for the reputation which followed him. We went into the first day, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I was assigned to a group of 10 people to work on a problem with some coding. All was going well, until we came to do some group presentations. For our group, a young woman named Natalie was speaking for our results. It all seemed to go okay, but after the session was over, Raj asked to see Natalie out in the hall. From inside the room, we could hear Raj literally screaming at her. Many offensive slurs were used, and we could hear banging on the wall as well. Natalie returned to the room a sobbing mess, much to the shock of everyone. Raj returned as if nothing had happened. This pattern continued over the course of the week. Raji would single out people for these one-on-one performance critiques. He would go into detail about how work was substandard and how they needed to improve, all while taking group photos for corporate comms for the higher-ups, orchestrating shots to make us all look like one big happy family. I spoke to some of my own team back home about this in my downtime, and it does turn out that this has always been rumored behavior for him. Just no one ever knew someone who had experienced this before. I don't know what the job culture is like for this role in a place like America, but here we have dignity at work regulations. Performance criticism is fine, but not when you are engaging in ritualistic humiliation of your employees. I knew exactly what I was going to do. For the next few days, I made sure that I was delivering more presentations than anyone else and really making an effort to attract attention. As hoped, he asked me for a chat and pulled me into the hall. He didn't wait for the door to close before starting his rant. Experiencing it firsthand was interesting. He claimed I had no idea what I was talking about, even though it had likely been about 20 years since he did any technical work himself. He was vile, shouting, and spitting in my face. I also learned what the banging noises were. He would punch doors and slam his hands on the wall near me as if to try and intimidate me. I was prepared, mentally tough, and just smiled and nodded during the entire rant. He looked angry that I was reacting this way, and by the end of it I thought he was legitimately going to burst a blood vessel. When he was finished, I asked him if he was done. He told me to get out of his sight, and that's when I did it. I gave him a Glasgow kiss. For those unfamiliar, it is a headbutt, and it is not the first headbutt I've delivered in my life, having been brought up near Glasgow. He collapsed to the floor in shock, holding his nose, which didn't bleed, unfortunately, looking up at me. I leaned down, and in my most Glaswegian accent, I whispered to him, "If you ever disrespect me or my colleagues again, I'll kick the utter life out of you next time, you witch." I went back in the room while he did not. Inevitably, I got the HR call. Raji was in the room as well, and I could see that he had 2 black eyes as a result of the headbutt. I was asked to explain myself, and I told the truth, mostly. I explained about his abusive behavior, but focused specifically on the hand slamming and how it had been intimidating me. It hadn't really, but I massively played up on this aspect of the encounter. I described the headbutt as a reaction when he slammed the wall right next to my head with his hands. I wasn't sure what story he had told them, but I was sent away after this. I ultimately ended up with a disciplinary on my record, but no further consequences. Other team members were interviewed over the next few days, and once the pattern of abuse was established, Raji was terminated from the company. The most satisfying part of this was the day after, when everyone on the course went out for dinner. Natalie insisted that he stand next to her for the division group photograph, black eyes and all. I have to think that photograph contributed to his downfall in some way. I live in California, USA, and when I was 20, my best friend, who we'll call Josie, got me a job working at a car wash with him. I can honestly say this was the worst job I have ever had and would not wish it on anybody. For context, Josie was an illegal immigrant at the time, and pretty much every worker there, aside from the jerk manager, who we'll call Tim, was an illegal immigrant as well. I myself am born and raised in the United States. I want to say, though, that all my coworkers were very nice people, aside from a couple of supervisors, just working hard to provide for their families and put their kids through school. Being that all the workers there were illegal immigrants, they were subjected to a lot of bad treatment. Myself, too, at the hands of Tim. He is a total piece of trash. The type of guy who thinks he's better than everyone, dismisses things in a condescending way, plays innocent with customers when their cars get damaged somehow, and just outright verbally assaults you when he's frustrated. Definitely not manager material. Allow me to firsthand describe what it was like to work there, ladies and gentlemen, while also sprinkling in some personal encounters. We were not paid every hour. Instead, we sat on a bench, and only when a car came in and we were working on the cars were we paid. The supervisors would have us sit on the bench and take a break whenever there were no cars. We were not paid whenever we were on break. Instead, they kept a meticulous log for the exact amount of time you spent on your feet doing work and would tally that up at the end of the day and make you sign that you worked that many hours. So ultimately, for example, you could be there for 8 hours but only get paid for 3 hours. I knew a bit about the labor laws and knew this was illegal. I was going to go to the Department of Labor about it. But Josie begged me not to because he was scared that if there was an investigation, that they would find out he and the others there were illegal immigrants and deport them. So I reluctantly, but understandably, did not pursue. On top of that, I didn't personally document anything myself, regretfully, so I didn't feel like I would have a solid chance at suing them. To make up for the wages I should have been getting, I made sandwiches and burritos and sold them to the workers. I am a passionate chef who loves food. The manager eventually found out from the one drug addict supervisor that we had. This dude was Tim's little pet for every little thing. If we tossed food in the trash when we were cleaning out the cars, he would actually take it out of the trash sometimes and eat it. I wish I was making that up, but meth is a hell of a drug, I guess. Anyway, Tim confronted me about the food, telling me I can't be doing that, basically saying, what if one of the workers gets sick? To which I reply, I'm doing this to make up for the money that you should legally be paying me every hour. He didn't really have much to say to it and just kind of changed the subject. The health conditions of this place were atrocious, to say the least, and I would think with everything that I am about to unload on you guys that me selling food would be the least of his concerns. They would have us use chemicals without gloves, even if the chemicals in question said to use gloves, and they kept all the vacuum hoses stored in the trash cans at the end of the night after using them for trash, so the hoses would all be covered in gunk 24/7. No equipment at that place was ever cleaned after use. It all just perpetually got dirtier and dirtier as the days would go on. One of my first days working there, I was horrified to see the conditions of the employee bathroom. There was no toilet seat, no hand dryer, no paper towels, no soap or dispenser, and the lockers were inside the bathroom as well. I would instead go to the customer restroom at first, which was entirely up to par until Tim saw me coming out one day and asked me why I wasn't using the employee restroom and that I couldn't use the customer restroom. I explained the condition of it, and his genuine response to me was that the employee restroom lacked soap because the employees would steal it, and to just go into the room where the car detergent for the automatic car wash is and dip my hands into there and wash my hands with that. Seriously, what kind of jerk managerial response is that? I was, and still am, genuinely dumbfounded that this jerk could possibly be a manager. I finally got fed up with that nonsense after only a couple of months and decided to quit. On the day I quit, I'm supposed to start early in the morning, and I decided to show up in the afternoon when it was busiest to make things more difficult for him. I walk up and see him scrambling around working on cars in my place, grab his attention, and hand him my uniform, letting him know that I quit. His response to me was that he hoped I didn't hate him despite everything. Seriously, dude? How could I not? I didn't feel completely better even after quitting, so I decided that I wanted to get even, and that's where the revenge finally comes into play. A month after I quit, I was in the area shopping at a nearby mall and decided to go back to the car wash because I remember I had left my lock still on my locker and wanted to get it back. I go straight into the employee restroom without anyone noticing me and grab my lock. From there, I pull out my phone and start taking pictures of the condition of the restroom, and then I leave. Thankfully, with the blessing of José, I called CalOSHA, which is basically the Department of Labor but for health-related things, and told them everything I possibly could about the health conditions there, and offered my pictures to them. They told me they would send someone out to investigate, and I just waited. I don't remember how long it took until they went, but Josie told me that someone from the Department of Health showed up unannounced one day and inspected the entire place, and Tim was at a loss for words because he knew he was screwed with all the violations they kept finding on the place. It was a citation goldmine for that health inspector. This ended up costing them tens of thousands of dollars in fines and repairs. Mind you, this is a small, independent business, so it definitely hurt their bank account. Thankfully, none of the illegal immigrant workers were exposed, but instead given safer and healthier working conditions in the end. Tim was still the manager there for a few more years, but after so many one-star reviews on Yelp, with plenty of them mentioning him, that piece of trash finally got canned. As for me, I went on to finish culinary school and get an awesome job as a lead with amazing benefits, pay, and time off. Josie did extremely well for himself, too, becoming a manager at a car dealership and is living his very best life as a legal U.S. citizen. We're still best friends after 17 years. Life is great, and I take satisfaction in knowing Tim will never amount to anything beyond that 1 out of 5-star rated car wash. Edit 1. I forgot to mention this story took place in January of 2012. To also add clarity as to why I was working that kind of job if I was able to afford a cell phone back in 2012. I was a college student for the 2 years prior to this story and was not working during that time. I was trying to find work anywhere I could, but I did not have any luck, and that's when my best friend was able to talk to one of the former supervisors and pull some strings for me. At that point, I was not going to be choosy and just wanted to start building experience to make it easier to find better jobs in the future. My only source of income was through financial aid for college, which was used for bus fare, school supplies, and any other school-related things, but you're only given a certain amount of financial aid during each semester. And I felt paying a phone bill might be risky in case my financial aid gets cut off or anything along those lines to where I can't make the payment. My dad got me one of the early Samsung Android phones as a surprise because he genuinely just always wanted to help me, and I wasn't the type to ask him for anything. He told me he wanted to cover the phone bill for while I was still trying to better establish myself and get on my feet. This also made it easier to do homework and further job search, as I could do it straight off my phone or Wi-Fi tether my laptop, as we did not have internet in the house until towards the end of 2012, sadly.